stood in the dusty airport hangar and looked at the plane. The metal was rust-colored and the paint was peeling off in long strips. The windows were thick with grime. One engine had a hole in it that you could see through. The wheels were flat. The seats inside were torn and stained with oil. Everyone who came to look at it shook their head and walked away. The Galactic Council observers stood to the side with their long necks and pale skin. They watched with amusement. One of them made a sound that might have been a laugh. He said something to the other observers in their own language. They all made the same sound. They did not think could understand them, but she could. She understood every word. They said she was foolish. They said humans wasted resources on broken things. They said this plane would never fly again. Did not care what they thought. She had something they did not have. She had an idea. The auctioneer had called out the price. No one else was bidding. The plane sat on the lot for months. It came from the 1970s when humans still built planes with simple metal and simple engines. It was cheap, very cheap. Spent all her savings, $600,000 for something that weighed tons and could not move on its own. Her colleague David laughed when she told him. He worked at the research facility with her. David said she had lost her mind. He said she should have bought a house instead. He said the plane was junk. Everyone at the facility said the same things. They sent emails about her decision. They joked about her at lunch. One person made a chart showing how much money she had wasted. Caroline Martinez was best friend. Caroline worked in human resources at the facility. She came to see after work on a Friday. They sat in Caroline's car in the parking lot. Caroline said she was worried about. She said was smart but sometimes made bad choices. She said maybe needed help. She said maybe was depressed and this was why she bought the plane. Did not argue, she just smiled and said she was fine. She said Caroline would understand later. She said everyone would understand later. She did not say more than that. That was when came into the story. Was 62 years old. He had been a pilot since he was 18. He flew combat planes in wars. He flew passenger planes for airlines. He flew cargo planes to remote places. He learned how to fix engines by doing it himself in small towns where there were no mechanics. He read every manual about flight that he could find. He knew more about planes than most engineers knew. Met at an aviation museum. She was looking at old plane designs. She was taking pictures and writing notes, was looking at the same planes. He asked her what she was studying. She told him about the plane she had bought. She told him her plan. She told him what she believed was possible. Did not laugh, he listened carefully. He asked good questions. He understood immediately what she was trying to do. He said he wanted to help her. He said it was possible. He said it would be very difficult but possible. They went to see the plane together the next day, walked around it slowly. He touched the metal. He looked at the engines. He looked at the wings and the frame. He opened panels and looked inside at the systems. It took him 2 hours to examine everything. When he finished, he nodded. Said the plane had a good skeleton. He said the metal was strong even though it looked bad. He said the engines could be rebuilt. He said the systems were old but simple. He said simple was good. He said humans understood simple things better than complicated things. He said that might matter. They began the work immediately, brought his tools to the hangar, brought tools too. They worked every day. They worked in the morning and afternoon. They worked at night under lights. They removed panels and looked at everything inside. They tested every wire and every pipe. They cleaned out all the grime and rust and oil. The Galactic Council observers came to watch sometimes. They stood and took pictures. They made notes on their devices. One of them asked what they were doing, said they were restoring the plane. The observer asked why, said because believed it could do something important. The observer made the laughing sound again. The work went on for months, and did not talk much while they worked. They just worked, but sometimes told stories about planes he had flown. He told her about a plane that lost an engine and he had to land it in a field. He told her about a plane that flew through a storm and the lightning hit the wing but the plane kept flying. He told her about the time he flew so low over water that he could see his reflection. These stories told that understood something important. He understood that old things could be strong. He understood that simple things could work better than complicated things sometimes. Spent her time during the work thinking about the frequency. She had discovered something strange in the old Earth radio signals from the 1940s. These signals had a pattern that did not match anything in the galaxy. The pattern was weak and simple, but it had properties that confused advanced technology. Believed that if she could rebuild this pattern and make it bigger, it could solve a problem that had troubled the galaxy for hundreds of years. The Galactic Council had a problem they could not fix. There was a cosmic interference that blocked communications across certain regions. The most advanced ships had technology that should have filtered out this interference. But it did not work. Nothing worked. Billions of people were separated by this interference. They could not talk to each other across the barrier. The Council had tried everything. They had spent enormous resources. Nothing helped. Believed the answer was in something old, something human, something that came from a different way of thinking. She believed that this plane could carry a device that could broadcast the ancient frequency pattern. She believed it would work. By the end of 4 months, the plane was different. The metal was clean, the paint was fresh. The engines were rebuilt and they ran smooth. The windows were clear, the seats were repaired. New systems were installed, the plane looked like it could fly. Took up in the cockpit. They sat in the pilot and co-pilot seats, put his hands on the controls. He said tomorrow they would try the first real flight. He said he hoped his old instincts still worked. He said he hoped the plane was as strong as it looked. He said he hoped was right about all of this. Said she knew she was right. She said she could feel it. She said the plane would do something no one expected. She said everyone who laughed would understand then. She said they would all finally understand what humans could do. The sun rose over the airfield early in the morning, stood on the tarmac and looked at the sky. It was clear. There were no clouds. The wind was light and steady. It was a perfect day for flying. People had come from everywhere. They came in cars and ships. Scientists came. News reporters came. Workers from the research facility came. The Galactic Council sent more observers than before. They came because they wanted to see what would happen. Most of them wanted to see fail. Some hoped she had actually created something that worked, but most wanted the failure. David was there. He stood with other engineers. He had brought a camera to record the disaster he expected. Caroline was there too. She stood next to and said nothing. She just held his hand, appreciated that. The crowd gathered behind a metal fence. There were hundreds of people. The galactic observers stood apart from the humans. They had their devices ready to measure and record everything. One of them looked at and made the laughing sound again. Came from the hangar wearing his old pilot clothes. He had a leather jacket that was worn from years of use. He walked slow and steady toward the plane. He did not look nervous. He looked certain. Gave him a hug. She said be careful, said he was always careful. He said that is how he lived this long. He said he would take the plane up and do some basic maneuvers. He said that was all they needed for today. Knew that was not all. She knew about the modifications she had hidden inside the plane, but she said nothing. Climbed into the cockpit. He checked everything. He looked at the instruments. He moved the controls. He spoke into the radio and confirmed the flight path with air traffic control. Everything was normal. Everything was routine. Then he started the engines. The first engine coughed and caught. Black smoke came from it for a moment, then the smoke cleared. The engine ran smooth. The second engine started, then the third. The plane had 4 engines total. Soon all 4 were running, and the sound of them together was loud and powerful. The ground vibrated. The people watching felt it in their bodies. Taxied the plane down the runway. It picked up speed slowly. The wheels left the ground. The nose pointed up. The plane climbed into the sky. People cheered. Even those who wanted it to fail could not help but cheer. The plane was flying. It was actually flying. Took the plane higher. He moved the controls smooth and careful. The plane turned left. Then it turned right. It climbed higher and faster, was showing that he could control it. He was showing that the plane was stable and strong. Then something changed. Pressed a button on a small device she held. It was hidden in her pocket. No one saw her press it, but the button activated systems inside the plane. These systems had been installed in secret, knew about them because had told him, but no one else knew. Plane's frame began to emit a frequency. The frequency was old. It came from Earth radio waves from the 1940s. It was simple and basic. It was not complicated like modern technology, but it had a property that nothing else had. The frequency resonated with the cosmic interference in a way that confused it. The frequency did not fight the interference. Instead, it matched some of the interference's properties while being different in other ways. This created a harmonic pattern. A pattern that disrupted everything built on advanced technology. The galactic observers' devices started to malfunction immediately. Their screens flickered. Their sensors gave wrong readings. The devices in their hands stopped working. They pressed buttons, but nothing happened. They looked at each other with confusion and then with concern. In the sky, felt the plane respond differently. The controls became lighter. The engines ran smoother. The vibration changed. The plane moved through the air like it was dancing. understood what was happening. Its modification was working. The plane was broadcasting something that affected the physics around it. The old technology combined with the frequency was creating something new, something that advanced technology did not expect. Did a barrel roll? The plane spun around itself in the air. People on the ground gasped. A plane this old was not supposed to do that, but it did. Brought the plane back level and continued flying. The test flight went on for 30 minutes. During that time, the galactic observers struggled with their devices. Their technology was disrupted. The very tools they used to measure and observe were broken by the frequency. They could not understand what was happening. They could only watch helplessly as the plane performed maneuvers that seemed impossible. Finally brought the plane back toward the airfield. He came in smooth and controlled. The landing was perfect. The wheels touched the ground and the plane rolled to a stop. The engines shut down. The noise stopped. For a moment there was silence. Then the crowd erupted. People screamed and cheered and jumped. They ran toward the plane. The workers from the research facility jumped over the fence. Caroline pulled into a tight hug. David had a confused look on his face. His camera had recorded everything, but his mind could not process what he had seen. Climbed out of the cockpit. He jumped down from the plane and landed on the tarmac. He walked toward. His face showed no emotion. He had experienced many things in his life, but this was different. He had flown something that should not have been possible. The galactic observers gathered their broken devices. They looked at and with different eyes now. They were no longer amused. They were no longer certain. They were unsure. For the first time, they questioned what they thought they knew about humans and what humans could do. One observer approached directly. This observer was higher ranked than the others. His skin was darker and his neck was thicker. He asked what she had done. He asked what system she had installed. He asked what frequency the plane was broadcasting, looked at him and smiled. She said he would find out everything soon. She said they would have a formal hearing. She said she would explain everything then. She said for now, he should just accept that humans had surprised him. The observer made a sound, but it was not a laugh this time. It was a sound of frustration and curiosity mixed together. As the sun started to set and stood together looking at the plane, the old rusty plane that everyone had mocked was now the center of attention. News networks across the region were broadcasting reports about the flight. The story was spreading. People everywhere were asking questions about what had happened. Some people were excited. Some people were afraid. Everyone knew that something significant had occurred. Put his hand on shoulder. He said the second part of the plan had worked perfectly. He said now came the hard part, the part where they had to explain everything to people who did not want to believe. Said she was ready. She said she had always known this moment would come. She said the hearing took place in a large building built by the Galactic Council. The building had been here for 5 years. It was made with materials that could not be destroyed easily. The walls were smooth and silver-colored. The floor reflected light like glass. The ceiling was so high that you had to lean back to see it. Walked into the hearing room with beside her. The room was full of council members. There were 12 of them at the main table. They came from different species. Some had 2 eyes, some had 3, some had skin that was green, some had skin that was blue. One member had skin like metal that reflected the light. They sat and looked at without smiling. The lead council member was named. He was tall and his skin was the color of ice. He had no hair on his head. His eyes were black with no white part. He spoke in a voice that sounded like wind moving through a canyon. He said the council had gathered to understand what had done. He said the modifications to the plane had disrupted their technology. He said this was a serious matter. He said if it created a weapon, she would face consequences. He said the council took threats seriously. Did not look afraid. She stood straight and spoke clearly. She said she had not created a weapon. She said she had created a tool. She said the tool could solve a problem that the council had never been able to solve. She said the council should listen before they made accusations. Nodded slightly. He said, very well. He said, present your evidence. Turned to address all the council members. She spoke in simple words that everyone could understand. She explained that she had studied human history and human technology. She said humans came from a harsh world. She said this harsh world forced humans to develop differently than other species. She said humans learned to adapt quickly. She said humans learned to use resources in creative ways. She said humans learned to solve problems without the benefit of advanced technology. She continued. She said advanced technology was built on assumptions. Those assumptions came from other species who had more resources. Those species did not need to find multiple uses for one tool. Those species did not need to make solutions that worked with damaged equipment. Those species did not need to think about what could be done instead of what could not be done. One council member interrupted. She was small and had silver hair. She asked if was saying that humans were primitive. Said no. She said humans were different. She said different was not the same as primitive. She said being different meant seeing solutions that advanced species could not see because they had never needed to look that way. Stood up and spoke. He explained his role in the project. He said when you understand both ancient technology and modern technology, you can see connections that others miss. He said the plane was built with simple systems. He said those simple systems did something that complicated systems could not do. He said it was not because simple was better. It was because simple and old worked differently than new and complicated. Took over again, she explained the cosmic interference problem. She said this interference had blocked communications for hundreds of years. She said the council had tried using the most advanced filters. She said those filters did not work because they were trying to fight the interference. She said instead of fighting, she had looked for a way to match part of the interference while disrupting another part. She said this was a human approach. She said humans often worked with problems instead of just against them. She explained the frequency. She said humans in the 1940s had developed radio technology. She said this technology was primitive compared to modern communications, but she said it had a specific property. The frequency used by these old radios had a harmonic quality. This quality made it resonate with some aspects of the cosmic interference in a way that nothing modern could do. She said when the old frequency met the interference, it created disruption in the interference's pattern. She said this disruption allowed communications to pass through. She said the proof was the test flight. She said the plane had broadcast the frequency and everything worked perfectly. The council members talked among themselves in their own languages. Could not understand most of them, but she picked up some words. Danger, possible, unprecedented, threat, solution. Raised his hand and the talking stopped. He asked if was suggesting that this frequency could be used to solve the cosmic interference problem that had affected the entire galaxy. Said yes. She said it was not theory anymore. She said had flown the plane and the frequency had worked. She said she wanted to develop this further. She said they could build transmitters at key locations and broadcast the frequency continuously. She said this could clear the interference from all affected regions. One council member stood up. He was tall and had blue skin. His name was, he was young for a council member. He had always questioned the council's decisions about other species. He looked it carefully. He asked a question that changed everything. He asked what wanted in return. He asked if she was expecting payment or position or power. Answered without hesitation. She said she wanted 3 things. First, she wanted humans to be recognized as equal partners in solving this problem, not assistants, not subjects, partners. Second, she wanted young human engineers and scientists to be trained alongside alien scientists. She said humans had knowledge that could not be found in any database, knowledge that came from solving problems with limited resources. Third, she said she wanted a research facility where humans and aliens could work together on other impossible problems. Nodded slowly. He looked at. He said this seemed reasonable. He said humanity had proven they had value. He said it was time to use that value instead of dismissing it. Stood up. He said the council would consider his proposal. He said they would conduct their own investigation of the plane and the frequency. He said they would verify that what it claimed was true. He said the hearing would resume in 1 week. He said until then, the plane would be carefully studied. He said and should prepare to discuss implementation details. Asen left the hearing room, approached them. He was walking alone, separate from the other council members. He said he believed. He said he had always suspected that humans had more potential than his colleagues recognized. He said her discovery proved it. He said he would support her proposal to the other council members. He said the next week would be crucial. He said they needed to convince the council that working with humans was better than controlling humans. Asked why he believed in them, said because had studied human history, the council approved proposal. They agreed to partner with humans on the interference project. They established a new research facility that would be shared equally by humans and aliens. They sent engineers from dozens of different species to work with and found himself leading a team of human pilots and engineers. These were people who had worked in industry and aviation and construction before the aliens came to Earth. They did not have formal training in galactic technology, but they had something else. They had experience solving problems with what they had available. They had learned to improvise and adapt. They had learned to see what was broken and fix it with whatever materials were at hand. One of his team members was named George Price. George had been a mechanic on Earth for 40 years. He worked on old engines and modern engines. He understood how machines worked by feel and intuition. He could listen to an engine and know what was wrong just from the sound. The alien engineers thought this was impossible. They said you needed to use instruments to diagnose problems. George just smiled and kept doing what he did. Usually he was right before the instruments finished their readings. Another team member was Stone. She was an engineer who had built bridges and buildings. She understood structure and stress and how materials moved under pressure. She had never worked with galactic materials before, but the first time she looked at the planned transmitter design, she saw a weakness that the alien engineers had not seen. She explained that the design would vibrate in a specific way that could cause it to fail after several years of use. The alien engineers checked her analysis. She was right. They redesigned it based on her recommendations. The new design was better and would last longer. Caroline was appointed as the liaison between the human team and the Galactic Council. She worked hard to help communication between the species. She learned some of the alien languages. She helped explain human cultural habits that confused the aliens. She helped explain why humans needed to sleep and why humans got emotional about their work. Some of the aliens did not understand emotions. They thought emotions made humans unreliable. Caroline explained that emotions gave humans the drive to work on impossible problems. She said emotions made humans persist when logic said to quit. The aliens began to understand that emotion was not a weakness, but a different kind of strength. The work moved forward quickly, and the alien engineers designed transmitter systems. The systems were based on the frequency from the old plane, but these systems were much larger and more powerful. These systems would broadcast the frequency across entire regions of space. The frequency would disrupt the cosmic interference and allow communications to pass through freely. The first transmitter was built at a location called Station Gamma. It was a remote station in the outmost region of controlled space. The station had been built in an area where the interference was strongest. It was the most difficult place to communicate with the rest of the galaxy. If the transmitter worked there, it would work anywhere. The installation took 3 weeks. Humans and aliens worked together. The humans often found better ways to install the complicated equipment. They found angles and approaches that made the installation faster. They found ways to protect the equipment from damage. The alien engineers started to pay attention to these ideas. They started to ask humans for their suggestions before beginning work. One day during the installation, a critical system failed. The main power connector broke in a way that was not supposed to be possible. The connector was made of materials that were supposed to be impossible to break, but it was broken. The repair would take weeks if they had to order new parts from the main supply center. They would miss their completion deadline. The entire project would fall behind. The aliens argued about what to do. Some wanted to continue without that system. Others wanted to wait for new parts. Some wanted to abandon Station Gamma and try a different location. The arguments went on for hours. No one could find a solution. Then George Price approached the broken connector. He looked at it without saying anything for several minutes. He walked away and came back with some old Earth materials that had been brought to the station. He had some copper wire. He had some basic metals. He had some old circuit boards from Earth technology. He asked if he could try something. The aliens said he could try, but they did not think it would work. George worked for 2 hours. He rewired the system using the old Earth materials. He built a bypass that took the power from the broken connector and routed it through the new system he created. It was crude and simple compared to the original design, but when he activated it, the system worked. The power flowed correctly. The main transmitter came to life. The alien engineers examined George's work carefully. They could not believe something so simple could work, but it did. The alien chief engineer named said he would never have thought of this solution. He said the solution seemed wrong because it was not elegant. He said it was too basic, but he said it worked better than the broken original system. He said from this day forward, he would remember that simple sometimes worked better than complicated. News of the solution spread through the project teams. More aliens started asking humans for ideas. More humans started suggesting solutions. The dynamic began to shift. It was no longer aliens telling humans what to do. It became a genuine partnership. They argued with each other about the best approaches. Sometimes humans won the argument. Sometimes aliens won the argument, but they arrived at better solutions together than either group could have alone. The transmitter at Station Gamma was activated after 2 more weeks of work. The frequency broadcast out into space. It disrupted the cosmic interference in the predicted way. Communications through the interference area went from impossible to crystal clear. Messages that had been blocked for decades now came through perfectly. People on one side of the interference celebrated. They had been cut off from the galaxy for so long. Suddenly, they could communicate with billions of people again. News networks broadcast the story across the galaxy. Humans and aliens had solved a problem that had defeated the most advanced civilizations for centuries. The success of Station Gamma meant that other transmitter installations could proceed with confidence. The Council approved funding for 20 more transmitters across the galaxy. More humans were brought into the project. More humans worked alongside aliens. The culture of the research facility completely changed. The dismissive attitude toward humans disappeared. Respect took its place. One day was working on the design of the next transmitter, asked a personal question, asked why believed in when no one else did, said he had flown planes for his entire life. He said pilots learn to trust their instincts. He said his instincts told him that saw something important that others could not see. He said his instincts have never been wrong about people. Said this was interesting. He said alien species made decisions based on data and logic. 6 months had passed since the first transmitter was activated. The cosmic interference that had blocked communication for 300 years was gone. All 27 planned transmitters had been installed and activated. The barrier that separated billions of people across the galaxy was completely removed. Ships traveled freely through regions that had been isolated for centuries. Messages traveled at the speed of light and arrived instantly on the other side of what used to be the interference zone. People who had been separated from family members for generations could finally talk to each other again. Trade routes opened up. Knowledge and culture began to flow freely between regions that had been cut off. The Galactic Council held a ceremony to celebrate the achievement. The ceremony took place on a massive platform in the sky above Earth. The platform was so large that thousands of people could stand on it. Representatives from 200 different species attended. News networks broadcast the event across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings watched what happened next. Walked onto the platform. She wore simple Earth clothes. She did not wear fancy things or try to look important. She just looked like herself. People cheered when they saw her. The cheering came from humans and aliens both. They cheered for a long time. Walked beside her. The crowd cheered for him too. He had become known throughout the galaxy as the pilot who had first tested the impossible plane. Every pilot in the galaxy knew his name. Every person who had studied the breakthrough knew what he had accomplished. The lead council member approached. He spoke so that everyone could hear. He said had proven that different approaches to problems could create solutions that seemed impossible. He said she had proven that humans had unique value to the galactic community. He said the council was granting a permanent position as an advisor on human innovation. He said was also being granted the same honor. He said they would help guide future projects that required creative thinking and adaptation. Stepped forward and spoke to the crowd. She spoke in simple words. She said she had not done this alone. She said had believed in her idea when no one else would. She said Caroline had helped communicate with the Galactic Council. She said George Price and Stone and dozens of other humans had contributed crucial ideas. She said, and other aliens had been willing to work with humans as equals. She said the real achievement was not hers alone. The real achievement was that two very different groups had learned to work together and trust each other. She announced her next project. She said she wanted to create an institute for human and alien cooperation. She said the institute would be called the Terra Institute for Cross-Species Innovation. She said the mission would be to find other problems in the galaxy that seemed impossible to solve. She said teams of humans and aliens would work together to find solutions. She said humans had a gift for looking at old things in new ways. She said this gift could be valuable for many other challenges the galaxy faced. The crowd erupted in cheers. The announcement spread immediately across the galaxy through news networks. Universities and research centers began making plans to send representatives to the Terra Institute. The Galactic Council approved funding. Construction began immediately on a massive facility on Earth. Approached and after the ceremony, he shook their hands in the human way that he had learned. He said he was proud to have helped make this possible. He said his colleagues on the council were now convinced that cooperation with humanity was essential for the galaxy's future. He said some of them had already asked him for advice about human behavior and thinking. He said the council would likely approve more joint projects in the coming years. He said humans were no longer just a curiosity to the Galactic Council. Humans were recognized as valuable partners. David came to congratulate too. He still had the camera from the test flight. He had become a documentary filmmaker. He had filmed the entire project from beginning to end. He said he wanted to make a full documentary about's journey. He said people needed to see how one person's belief could change the galaxy. Agreed to work with him on it. Caroline organized a celebration for the human team. She gathered everyone who had been part of the project. They gathered in a large hall. There was food and music and dancing. Humans and aliens celebrated together. Some of the aliens tried human food and did not like it. Some tried it and loved it. The party went on late into the night. 3 weeks later, the Terra Institute opened its doors. The building was massive and made with materials that combined human design with alien construction techniques. Became the director. Became the chief advisor for practical applications. They hired 50 humans and 50 aliens as the first staff members. Students started applying immediately. Within months, 300 humans and aliens were working at the Institute. The projects started coming. One project was to find a cure for a disease that had affected an alien species for thousands of years. Humans approached the problem differently than aliens had. Within 3 months, humans and aliens together had identified a solution. Another project was to improve transportation systems on a planet where the ecosystem was fragile. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology created a system that was better for the environment. Another project involved recovering ancient artifacts from the deep ocean of a water planet. Humans who were experienced divers worked with aliens who had water-resistant technology. Together, they recovered thousands of artifacts that had been lost. The old plane was preserved and displayed in the main hall of the Terra Institute. School groups visited constantly. Children from dozens of different species stood in front of the old plane and listened to the story. Teachers explained how one rusty, broken, worthless plane had become the key to solving one of the galaxy's greatest problems. They explained how humans had looked at the plane and saw potential where others saw only junk. They explained how human determination and creative thinking had changed everything. One day and stood together in front of the preserved plane. They were quiet for a moment. They thought about the journey that had brought them here. Said she remembered the day she bought the plane. She said everyone had called her crazy. She said she had felt completely alone. Said he remembered flying the plane for the first time. He said he had not known if it would work. He said his hands had shook on the controls, laughed and said she had never known that. She said she had always seemed so confident to her. Said you hide fear when someone is counting on you. He said had shown him a vision that was worth any risk. Said the story was not finished. She said they had solved the cosmic interference problem. She said they had created the Terra Institute. She said they had begun showing the galaxy what humans could do. But she said there were countless other problems waiting to be solved. She said there were countless other opportunities for humans and aliens to work together. She said the old plane had opened a door that would never close again. Agreed. He said the future would be different now. He said humans would no longer be treated as less intelligent or less capable. He said humans would be valued for what they could contribute. He said the galaxy would be stronger because of this change. He said it all started with faith in an impossible idea and his willingness to help her pursue it. They stood together looking at the plane as the sun set outside the building's great windows. The plane that everyone had mocked had become a symbol of human potential and human courage. It showed that the human gift was not in having the most advanced technology. The human gift was in seeing solutions that no one else could see. The human gift was in never giving up even when everyone else said it was impossible. The human gift was in believing that impossible things could become possible if you worked hard enough and thought differently enough. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had arrived not as conquerors or servants but as partners, and the galaxy was better for it, and had changed the course of history not with weapons or power, but with a broken plane and an idea that refused to die. The story of their achievement would be told for generations to come. It would be told on every world and by every species that joined the movement toward true cooperation and partnership among the stars. The future had arrived, and it had begun with something that everyone else had thrown away. Said humans made decisions based on feeling and instinct. He said both approaches had value. He said the galaxy would benefit from combining both approaches. By the end of the 4th month, 3 more transmitters had been installed successfully. The interference was clearing from large sections of space. Communications improved dramatically. Trade between isolated regions became possible again. Cultural exchange began. Young aliens from different species started working together on projects. The barriers that had separated the galaxy for centuries were breaking down. And none of it would have happened without a woman who bought a broken plane and a pilot who believed in her vision. He said he saw how humans had survived and thrived in competition with others. He said he saw how humans formed strong bonds and fought for those they loved. He said he saw how humans never gave up even when failure seemed inevitable. He said these qualities were rare in the galaxy. He said they should be valued and used, not dismissed and forgotten. Thanked, she said his support meant everything. She said she knew the council would be skeptical. She said she understood their concerns about disruption and change. But she said progress always required taking risks. She said humans understood this better than most species because humans lived with risk constantly. Smiled, it was the first time I'd seen him smile. He said he looked forward to seeing what humans and aliens could accomplish together. He said the galaxy was about to change. He said he was honored to help guide that change. As walked away to join the other council members and knew that the hardest part was behind them. The revelation had been made. The truth was known. Now came the work of proving it and building something greater than anyone had imagined before. Ruth would speak for itself. They walked away from the plane as darkness fell over the airfield. Behind them, security guards began to set up barriers around the plane. No one was allowed to touch it now. No one was allowed to examine it. The plane was protected until the formal hearing could take place. The old plane had become the most important object on the planet. Nodded, he looked out at the runway beyond the hangar. He said that tomorrow everyone would watch them. He said they would watch to see them fail. He said failure would be interesting too. But he said was right. He said he believed in her idea. He said that tomorrow would change everything. And left the plane that night. The hangar was dark and empty. The plane sat there, silent and ready, waiting for its moment to prove what human ingenuity could accomplish.